Humanity Matters.
Hi, my name is Zachary Graulich. I'm the Assistant Director of Education here at HMTC, and welcome to another episode of Legacy Chronicles. I am joined here with one of our very dedicated and devoted second-generation survivors here in our community, Cindy Rabinowitz. Thank you so much for being here, Cindy.
Thank you for having me.
It's really such a pleasure to have you here. You've been involved for not too long, but you've really made an impact in your time here. I remember when you first came in, that very first day of docent training that you were a part of. So tell me a little bit about yourself, your background, and I guess kind of how you came to be involved here at HMTC.
Well, I think the interesting thing for me to have realized is how long it took for me to meet the moment here. I actually didn't come here until about 2.5 years ago. But my journey to really understanding my parents' experience in the Holocaust and my role as a 2G, I was not ready to really come this far down the road until I did. And I think how I embodied my 2G role is maybe not the same as a lot of other 2Gs. I realize in retrospect, I was very involved in advocacy, and I got politically involved with things. And so I wanted to make an impact, a good impact in the world. But that was how I assumed the role at that time until I came here. And my parents have been, they've been deceased quite a while now, and I feel compelled to really step into the role of telling their story and the story for all the Holocaust survivors.
So you said that you had to get to a place, I guess, where you felt ready to come here and get involved. What was that moment, I guess, for you, or what did it take to get to that place where you felt that you were ready to come to an organization like this and speak so personally?
Well, I think I did spend a good part of my life trying not to actually be identified by the Holocaust. I wanted to just be like everyone else, and I went away to college fairly far from where I grew up in Connecticut, and then I moved to Manhattan, lived there for 6 years, and met my husband, and lived in New York for 1,000 years now. But I just felt like I had to go through all those steps to really understand how I was going to be the narrator of the story here. And even in the tours, I feel I insert my parents' story into how I lead the tours.
Yeah. But you spent a while, not really, as you say, trying to identify as a part of the Holocaust, or really maybe as a 2G in many ways. Did you always know growing up that you were a child of survivors? Was it just kind of something that was existing in your household, I guess, if you can say that?
No, I was very aware of it. My sister, sadly, who is also passed away many years ago, she took on that role. She was 6.5 years older than me. So she was the one who did all that stuff and, learned all the facts and figures and documentation. And I was happy to, let her be that person. But I wanted to just, go out with my friends and go away to college. I think I just felt that I wanted to have my own identity because it was such a big part of our lives. And it was important to feel like my own person in the midst of it.
Yeah. So you almost wanted to separate from it for some time before eventually coming back to it, as you said, when you finally were able to come here. And as I said, I remember when you got first involved. I remember that docent training seminar that you attended and how personal it was for you, and how you kept sharing with me and everybody else there that this was something you didn't know if you could ever do. It wasn't something that you knew down the line, like some 2Gs, I know I'm going to do something. I know I'm going to get involved. You weren't really too sure. And so you've come a long way. And as you mentioned, you are one of our docents here. You give tours and you try to weave your family's history into museum tours when you speak to student and adult groups. So what has that been like for you to be able to give tours on a regular basis to really the next generation and put yourself and your family into the programming?
It's so rewarding and so purposeful. And I think that was part of what inspired me too. I know at this point in my life, it's so important always is, but especially to have purpose. So what better purpose is this? When I'm with the kids, and especially, as you know, the little ones, I leave here just so rewarded. They're all great. All the students are, no matter their grade, but they especially exhibit such, curiosity, and they're so engaged and receptive, which always surprises me because of the topic that they're, here to learn about. That inspires me to keep going, and it hopefully will fuel my finally doing the testimonial that my parents actually deserve for me to do for them.
Yeah, I know you've been working for a while on kind of gathering everything and getting to that place where you feel you can do that, because it is a completely different initiative. It's one thing to give a museum tour to students and tie your family history in a little bit here and there. And it's another to stand in front of a group of students and just kind of pour your heart out in saying, this is who I am, this is who my family is, and this is what happened to them. It's a completely different concept. And so I know you've been working on that for a while, and tell me a little bit about what that journey has been like for you.
That's a very interesting journey. As after my mom passed away, it was my husband and I were tasked with selling the house I grew up in Connecticut. And I always say she was the neatest hoarder I ever knew. But I understand now what all those beautiful objects meant to her, given their experiences. And so, took us a couple of years, but the actual recording of their testimonial, which they gave to the Connecticut Historical Society, turned up in the midst of all of that. And I thought, well, I have to do something with this. And it actually, I did not watch it until many, many years later, until I came here. I just, I think it's just been a very difficult journey to really reconcile that my parents and my aunts and uncles, all of who were in concentration camps, to really think of them in such a, horrific environment. But that's why, I feel when I'm in Gallery 3 here, the one that documents, the horrors, that was such a reckoning for me. And I can stand there and see, and that's why I feel I have to do the presentation. Yeah. I see the horrors, but I see the incredible superhuman strength it took for them to survive, and how they had to believe that life was worth living to get through it. And I really understand how they didn't squander a moment of it once they survived and could build lives anew. So I feel I had to just understand all of it from that vantage point, rather than just standing there, but rather than not having the connection when I actually have the moment that I give it. So, yeah.
And the resilience and the resistance is something that I think for myself and for everyone here at HMTC is something that we love to talk about, especially with the students, because it shows that other side of the Holocaust that we don't get to explore very often. And unfortunately, even in these programs, we don't always have the time to. But you mentioned there was that, as you said, superhuman strength to just keep going, to live on and have hope somehow, some way that it would all be okay in the end. Did you see that strength in your parents, growing up with them? Did you hear the stories?
Oh, yeah. I actually didn't really want to hear those stories. And we lived in a split level, so my sister would dutifully sit there, and I'd just go up to my room and do my thing. So it's very different for both of us, but she absorbed so much more as the firstborn, so close to their having come to this country. So we had a very different experience, even in our own small family of origin, but they were always embracing of joy. They were generous and kind, and I just think that's miraculous in and of itself. I mean, who could blame anyone if they were to survive that and just be, terribly, unwilling to engage in a good way in life? But that's not what they modeled to me, and I think my sense of adventure really stemmed from that, and how they gave me wings to move relatively far away for college, and then, to leave Connecticut to move to New York. I think that took a lot of courage. I know it evolved. I mean, I really don't think that was instinctive because they wanted to be so protective, and many parents are anyway. But I just always sensed that if I could do it, I should, because they felt life was so worth experiencing and embracing. And I think I have learned all of that so much more here about who they were.
Yeah. And in learning about yourself and your family through this journey, I have to ask, what does your own community, your family, your friends, what do they think of what you're doing? What has the response been as you've been going through this journey the last couple of years?
They're very supportive. They understand how long it took for me to get to this place, and they're always interested. My friends, a cousin that I was very close with growing up with, who is much more like my sister was, with assuming her 2G role. So she's very thrilled. And I think that just gives us even a deeper sense of connection, because I finally am there. But I really feel that I had to take my own journey here. And everyone, all the 2Gs that I've met here have had their own unique path here. And that's been very informative to me as well.
Yeah. I mean, we see it with the survivors. We see it with the 2Gs. We see it even with some 3Gs, that you have to get to a point in your life when you not only have the actual time to devote to something like this, but you have to be mentally and emotionally ready for it, because it really is such an undertaking, especially, for someone like you who grew up hearing these stories, whether you wanted to or not. You kind of have to dive back into all those things that years ago you ignored, for lack of a better term, or that you suppressed in some ways because you didn't want to think of your mom or your dad. When you see these pictures of the concentration camps and what took place, you don't want to see them in that type of condition. But unfortunately, that is the reality. So I completely understand where you're coming from, in that it takes a long time to get there.
And I really think it was so important to me not to be defined by it. And I think my parents were not either. They were very identified with it. And as I work on the testimonial, the interesting thing is, in the cemetery where they're buried, and my aunts and uncles and friends of the family who were essentially like family, because it was all, survivors who built their community there. But they each have, and my father actually ensured that many would, a plaque on their the face of their headstones, and it says Holocaust survivor.
Yeah.
And I still, as I work on the testimonial, think of how incredibly powerful that is. In some ways so incongruous, because you're a survivor and yet there it is on the headstone. But I realize that that's how they are so identified, like mother, father, grandmother, sister. I mean, that was a role they served in life.
Absolutely.
And they wanted to ensure that lived on, even though they went to their final resting place. So it's such a powerful image to me, and to think that, that was so important. My father especially, that, if he was one of 9 siblings, and he and 2 others survived, but they all lived in Connecticut. So he ensured that, they too, everyone has the medallion, which I think they don't really make anymore. But it's very powerful to understand that was a role for them, just like they were my parents or my children's grandparents.
And now you've really taken on that role of 2G, of second generation survivor. So why is Holocaust education so important to you? You've touched on it a little bit as to what your parents felt in terms of wanting to make sure that the history carried forward. But for you personally, why is Holocaust education so important? Why are you doing the work that you're doing?
Well, given essentially the state of the world, where clearly the lessons have not been learned, and there's just, so much happening that should not, be occurring at this point, given what we teach the children here every day. I just feel that the children of survivors are the witnesses now. And, hopefully my own children who are 3Gs will take on their roles. But we are witnesses in that we were, there to receive the firsthand experiences of, their Holocaust history. And I just feel it's important, because it will be forgotten otherwise. And I do tell the kids when we get to the very last gallery, I often say to them, this last gallery is almost interchangeable with the first because they haven't learned anything, and except for the wall where we show the upstanders and all. But and that was my parents' greatest fear, that people would forget. And so, that probably motivated me to kind of take that on and ensure that they would not.
Have the 3Gs in your family, so your children, have they, shown interest in the history? Have they said that one day when they're at that point in their lives, they're going to take that on? Has that been a discussion at all?
I try not to impose that on them because of my own very lengthy journey to, assume this role myself. I know they're highly impacted because we would visit my parents at the house I grew up in every other weekend throughout most of their, younger years until college. And so there was no way they didn't observe that. They were very close with my aunts and uncles, and we had a very close family. So it's just ingrained in them. I'm sure when they find that it's the right time for them to, do what they're meant to do, they will, because it's really ingrained in all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really, some 2Gs say it was the fact that the family had so many survivors in these histories. It was like in the air you breathed, really. It was just something that everyone knew. You didn't have to be sat down and told. It was just kind of what it was. And as you said, it was one of the roles that these people played in many cases. I mean, not, of course, everybody, and every survivor had their different experiences, both before coming to America and afterwards, whether they spoke about it or not. But it really was a part of their identity in some way, shape, and form. And it seems like for you and your family, it was just instilled in you. And whether people in your family all speak about it or not, it's just something that you, I guess, feel passionately about, carrying the torch forward, as we say, making sure that people don't forget, which is what you said was, the biggest fear that your parents had, was that people would forget.
My sister often said that the Holocaust was the fifth family member in our family of four. And I think that was such an incredible image, because it was just always there. Even if you were just, doing the simplest things, it just was so woven into our family network, but it didn't hinder anyone. And I always think about, despite, as I say, the superhuman strength to be able to survive that, but also the things that can't be broken in someone. I mean, they were still, kind. They had great senses of humor. I mean, who they were at their core, that couldn't break, and that is such a lesson, I know that that's not true for all, and it's understandable, but I was very fortunate that I had that positive, example in my midst, really.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the statement you just shared from what your sister used to say is extremely powerful, and I've never heard anything like that before. And while, of course, it's unfortunate that is the reality, I think that's such an incredible statement for you to embody and really carry forward as you are, that it was just a part of you really as a member of the family, and it's staying with the family. It's kind of that member of the family that never passes away, right? It's always there. You always know that it's there, and in some ways, it's just kind of a part of your lives in every way, in everything you do, right? Something you think about every day.
Also, emblematic of that medallion, you know, as it's just always there.
Yeah.
Even when you move on to your next place.
It's there anyway.
It's there. And I think the work of the center and of all the wonderful people like you and the great docents I've met, everyone really, that that's the work, to make sure that, it doesn't just fade away. And that's why when I have the youngest ones, that I somehow tune into their enthusiasm for learning when they're here. But I just think, even if one of them, young as they are, can move on and do something, if they learn about being an upstander and what it means in even the smallest way, I just think it's such important work here, and I'm very privileged to be a part of it, really.
Well, we're privileged to have you as a part of the community, and you've really, like I said when we started the episode, you've made such an impact. You're involved in the second generation committee here. You really are passionate about this type of education in every way. And this journey that you've been on, watching you on this journey, has really been a privilege for me, I have to say, and I'm excited to see where it goes. So as we finish up, I want to ask you just kind of what is your hope for the future? I think we all have hopes and ideas for the future. That's why we're here. That's why we're doing the work that we're doing. So what for you specifically, what is your hope for the future?
Well, I can't believe we're back where we are and that anti-Semitism is, at its peak now. So my goal is that, we just keep working as hard as we can to spare ourselves, the horrors of what we teach here. It's just been I always say I'm relieved, much as I loved having my parents and relatives in my life, that they were spared what we're up against now. So I hope that we're just, a resource, a place that can make an impact and, hopefully change things for the better.
Well, I know we definitely are, thanks in part to you and people like you, 2Gs, non-2Gs, everyone who basically helps to make this organization what it is, helps to make these types of episodes possible, where we're able to just have a conversation here, and basically anyone, anywhere in the world can be listening to this. And so I appreciate you and everything that you've done. Like I said, I really am looking forward to seeing kind of how this journey unfolds for you, because I know it is far from over, and in many ways you're just getting started. And so I thank you for being here today. I thank you for everything you do. And to our listeners, thank you so much. You can find more information on hmtcli.org, where you will find links to all of our previous episodes and upcoming ones.